I'm gonna apologize. I was on my way there, and my vehicle decided that I was not on my way there, so I got dressed up. So I was
Mm.
coming. Um, so Emily, the camera's not on. I can't see the room.
Unfortunately, the camera is not, I can't get it to work. And I couldn't get the mic to work, so I'm on my laptop, so we got audio. I can share the PowerPoint. You guys just can't see us, so we should do introductions for the record.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And all of the officers are on the phone. So I was gonna ask one of you guys to run the meeting from there. Who? So let's start with introductions in the room, so I know who's in the room, both on the committee and in the room. So let's start with first of all, let's call this meeting to order. I think I can do that from here. I was told I could. Thank you for coming out for the Bylaws Committee. I want to thank you for all of your hard work that got us through two of our four founding documents confirmed so far, or one of three. I guess we don't count the schedule, but we're getting there. We've had great conversation. Again, apologizing for not being there. I was on my way, dressed as you can tell. Well, you can't because you can't see me, but I'm dressed, tie and all. So why don't we start with introductions in the room so I know who actually got there.
I'll start. So Clayton Seeley, Mecklenburg County.
Thanks. All right, Clayton.
Ben Shore, Mecklenburg County.
Matt. Charlotte
Rebecca.
Mecklenburg. I mean, City of Charlotte.
You made it. Okay.
Anthony Lindsay observing.
Dude, not today. We're gonna hit you, man. Who else you got?
Brad Thomas, City Attorney's Office.
Elizabeth Pursuti, Cats.
Emily Kunze Katz.
James Cass, Robinson Bradshaw.
Adam Dorr, Robinson Bradshaw.
I'm Stuart Pratt, City Attorney's Office as well.
Rodney McGill, concerned citizen.
Hey, Rodney. Anybody else? All right, on the phone. Frank, you going first?
Frank Emery on our teams. Hello. City of Charlotte.
Hi, Christy Long, City of Charlotte.
Ned Carr, North Carolina Senate.
And bringing home Matt Walters on Town of Davidson.
David Howard, City of Charlotte. All right, thank you all. So
Sorry.
did I miss somebody else?
No, go ahead.
Okay. All right, so first thing we wanted to do, Elizabeth, can you walk me through the agenda? Emily, since I don't have it in front of me, I would have had a paper copy when I got there.
Yep, we did call to order, introductions, discussion on the bylaws, governance documents, and then adjournment. But I think Adam and James with Robinson Bradshaw had some things they wanted to kind of review with us as we think about the updated bylaws.
All right, so at this meeting, we were hoping to be moving on to the Code of Ethics and the Conflict of Interest policy, but I don't think we're far off. If I can frame the conversation before we start, I'd like to make sure that we frame our comments around legal things that we think we need to take care of. There's stylistic things that would be pertinent to each individual member. And then there's board decisions that we need to actually make a recommendation on one way or the other. I want you to remember that first time around, only 10 people actually sent comments on anything, and only 5 sent it on the actual conflict of interest policy. I was taking that to mean that we were almost there, and I could tell from the room we were not far off. The two things that I think, well, the one thing that stood out the most was, again, one of the most complicated, and that's getting our hands around indemnification. So I'd like to make sure we start with that, or we make sure we deal with that. Adam, I won't tell you and James how to proceed, but I think I'm trying to say I would really like for us not to keep opening up a lot of new things that didn't show that we didn't see that we had people in the room that cared about it. But with that said, I've also asked Anthony to attend because being the friend that he's been to me for almost 30 years, he's very thorough. And I want to make sure that if there are some things, we give him an opportunity so that we can get him comfortable either on this call, Anthony, and I'm committed to making sure that we put you on the phone with the attorneys if needed to work through some of the maybe things you're still not comfortable with. So I think I'm saying indemnification, let's not open up a bunch of new things is what I'm asking, especially if they don't fit into those 3 categories. Any problems with that being the way we move forward? Speak now, if ever hold your peace. Anthony, I'm waiting for you. You good?
Sure thing. I mean, I haven't really had an opportunity to review the changes. I just picked up the packet here, so I don't know what all the changes are. So I didn't know how to evolve and proceed. I see there are a number of things on here that identify for discussion. So I just didn't know if that's what you're going to do, if you're going to discuss those or not. But
No, we're going to start with a presentation from the lawyers, but I wanted to make sure we kind of have some framework before we start having discussion is what I was trying to do.
yes.
Okay.
For my purposes, I made all my comments on what I sent in. So you guys have everything that I had concerns about and my comments respect.
All right, Adam, I'm going to let you take it from there and you can answer that question and then start doing your presentation.
Okay, so what we did since the meeting last week is we took the comments that were in the room during the discussion based on Emily's excellent notes, and then we also reviewed the comments from Mr. Lindsay. Those were the only written comments that we received. At the end of the meeting, Chair Howard asked anybody to submit anything by close of business Friday, and Mr. Lindsay was the only member who did that. So we took all of those comments and then we went back through the draft and considered all of those and put together this red line consistent with the idea from the chair. We did not make specific recommendations on some of the points that are really board decisions for discussion, but on the legal issues, we did make some proposed changes. I had my assistant go through and take the red line document and put it into a PowerPoint. So I thought we could just put that up on the screen and walk through that. Last time there were too many changes to do that efficiently. Today, a smaller number, and I think it'll just be quick to do that. Other than some of the more substantive issues might take a little longer, but I think we can roll through some of these pretty quickly.
My screen. I'm sorry, I don't even know how to hit. Okay.
The technology is not working today.
Here we go. All right. There we go.
Right.
There we go.
All right, can the Zoom folks see that?
We can.
Yes.
Yes. All right, so these are not all in exact order because some of them actually aren't really as substantive. That made sense. So the first one that we wanted to talk about was the alternate. James, do you want to go through this one?
Yeah, sure. So you can see that we added a sentence here that I think reflected some of the comments in the room around when an alternate can take the oath of office. As we talked about at the board meeting, an alternate will need to be sworn in order to be able to access non-public information or participate in a closed session. So we just clarified here that that an alternate has the opportunity to take that oath of office so they can access that information and participate in those sessions, essentially whenever they elect to, but no later than the first time that they're actually going to have to act. What we did not do here is define what an absence means. The statute and these bylaws provide that an alternate may act in the absence of the primary appointed member. The thinking with that decision was that the definition of absence could be set forth in the attendance policy that has been discussed a couple of times, which that will address the question as to whether there's any kind of limitations on the number of times that an alternate may act, any kind of notice provisions that they have to provide before participating. or any other requirements or criteria that the board sees fit to include there. Yep. Oh, yeah, I guess the chair can't see you, so.
Okay,
So Elizabeth, will you let us know when hands are raised so we can recognize?
Corinne Maxine raised. So my understanding is there was some concern about the ambiguity around absenteeism, based on the fact that most of us understood it to be a permanent absenteeism or long-term absence, rather than a temporary absence for an alternate to be seated. So I think we need to clarify what the board has determined at some point before we approve this particular language. I played a number of you can remember that conversation, but go ahead. I do. Yeah, I feel like absence, like they're not even there. Yes, absence would be.
Who's talking? I can't hear you.
This is, vacancy with my curriculum. So to me, absence does feel like it could be a little more clearly defined. And I feel like it needs to be more clearly defined here and not just in our actual policy towards attendance. It just feels like it doesn't have very much here.
And Matt, that was you, Matt, from Davidson.
That was
Clayton.
Oh, that was Clayton. Okay. And Ned has his hand up. Ned. Ned Curran, are you going to talk?
Sorry, just for context here, when there was discussion by managers, there was discussion around, is this alternate policy intended to act like the MTC where an assistant town manager could sit in and things like that? And there was, without coming to a conclusion, a stepping back, 27 people on a board is an awful lot to manage, as we've all learning. The idea that we would just in the worst case expand that to 54 in terms of checking on availability for meetings and things like that, I think is just something we need to all think about when we think about alternates. And so I think where Reverend Mack may have been going was where there's an extended absence, it makes sense to have somebody step in, but just meeting to meeting where somebody can't make it and they call in their alternate, it would be difficult to manage administratively for a board this size. So thank you.
And I have some thoughts on it too, but I want everybody else to go first. Anybody else?
Ken Short.
Yes, Ken.
I agree with the general principles that the other members have been articulating here. My concern, however, is that the statute says that for each appointment, the appointing authority may appoint an alternate that may act in the absence of the primary person appointed. And I'm concerned that we not do something that somebody will argue violates the statute by restricting the ability of the alternate to participate. So I'm just concerned that our council will look at that.
Right, and we don't have a slide for this, unfortunately. But if you look on the written version at the bottom of page 3, we were referring to an attendance policy of the board to deal with the idea of what it means, what the absence of the primary board member means here. Again, that's kind of kicking the can down the road rather than resolving the issue now. But it did seem like the question of what's an absence gets kind of technical and complicated. Like, is, if somebody just has to miss one meeting versus they're having a medical procedure and they'll be out on leave versus what if somebody has a conflict and has to recuse from one agenda item, like are they absent? And if it's an appointing authority that only has one member, maybe they would feel like they would want treated as an absence. So our proposed approach here was to defer to the attendance policy for the definition.
And I'll just point out, really, the fundamental difference is that the bylaws do require 21 votes and the policy only requires a majority.
So my concern, somebody's still talking in the room. My concern.
Say who you are, Brad.
Sorry, I was just saying that absence is not defined in the payback. So I think we have some room.
I didn't hear what he said, but my take on this one has kind of been more from a conflict of interest policy and a code of ethics. Not that anybody is doing anything wrong, but the idea that people can just kind of dip into conversations and dip out, bring opinions in, bring opinions out, not be part of all conversations is concerning to me with the type of responsibility that we have. Even Anthony, when we were in the meeting, when you were talking about the alternates, you were saying, keep them up so that they can sit in when you can't. I mean, I don't see this being kind of a tag in, tag out thing based on people's schedule. Are you counted absent as a primary member if your alternate comes? It just gets to be really, really complicated. And I don't know if this is something we shouldn't go back to the 5 towns that actually gave us alternates and talk about it, because we don't want to go to Raleigh and talk about it. But it's kind of unsure how you treat those 5 members in closed sessions and big decisions. Again, how do you say that somebody can't be there? I mean, I don't know. That seems like more headaches than it's worth. But that's where I am on it. So anybody else, and then I think we're going to do thumb votes on some of these things so we can keep going. So anybody else have an opinion on this alternate thing? I mean, I guess we could just leave it the way that Robinson Bradshaw has it and move on. So anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me? This is Frank. Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with the observation you make. I worry that this is pretty well engineered, if not over engineered a little bit. I like the idea of perhaps getting some information from the town appointors or appointing authorities to try to understand what people were aiming at, and then give another shot at it after that. Because all the qualifications that we have to put into it in this conversation make this strike me as hard to work in practice.
And the practice at MTC, and I'll be done with this one, was that because it was elected officials, I think most of them made their city managers the alternates. The point was to have a consistent voice in the room, and those managers attended all of the meetings too. So, I mean, I think there were some principles to Ned's point that follow the MTC that are not being followed here. At the very least, why don't we move forward this, because this doesn't hurt anything. We may just need to ask the towns to, I know they were meeting for a while, and maybe this is a great opportunity to pull the managers together, the mayors or whoever, and talk this through. So thumbs up or thumbs down on doing it this way, and maybe what we do going forward, because this doesn't tie us to anything. It just kind of leaves it open, but we may need to manage this with our appointing bodies and not deal with it here. So that was, and people in the room, how you guys feel about leaving it the way the attorneys have it?
This is Reverend Mack. I'm okay with you going back to the town and having that conversation, but I think we should put some limitation on the time period in which we're going to get a decision. We shouldn't be just opening it for parts too long.
And what I'm saying is, and what I'm suggesting is we leave it just like it is, because it's really not making us do anything. We're just taking back to the board that we're saying, if we do, this is how we're going to handle it. I think offline, because we don't need to vote on that, is Elizabeth, if you'll let me know who those, or Emily, who those 5 are that appointed somebody, it just may be worth some conversations with their managers and their mayors. Just to kind of talk through how we do that.
I get that, Dave, but I'm saying prior to coming back to the board, we should have a decision made in terms of what your conversations with those towns managers yielded.
Okay.
So that when we go, we have a clear, clear and concise decision as to what we will be doing.
Well, let me set expectations. I don't think we're going to get 5 towns to change anything before we vote on these bylaws. So that's what I guess I'm saying. Even if they do, it'll be several months of, it'll be talking it through, coming to some agreement, and then them taking it back to their bodies, Reverend Max. So that could be several months. What I'm saying is that we probably have to do, because of the payback, we have to probably do what's on the screen. But we need to, maybe in theory, because it leaves it up to each body to appoint alternates or not. I think we want to say maybe not. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think we have to, because I think Ken's right. We don't get around it. And at best, this gives us some way to control it. But we really need them just not to appoint people. That's what we need. So, but what else you got, Reverend Mac? Anything else?
We can remove the additional one.
Mr. Chair, family, if I could just offer 2 comments on this session.
Yeah, sure.
One of them, the reason for my comments, sort of mirrored what about earlier. So, but also that the idea of an alternate being sworn, which was partly tied to this section, was to give them an opportunity to be sworn, which would effectively put them under the same set of obligations as every other board member, primary or otherwise. So that obligation for them to adhere to whatever policies are in place should alleviate some of the concern about this sort of tag in, tag out, to use your terminology. And I think that those board members who, for example, if a particular board member were unavailable for a meeting and their alternate was available between now and the time we put a policy in place, how do we handle that? This is, I don't know how serious of a matter it is for the towns, but it seems that the towns were the only ones who appointed members because they only had one appointment. The other municipalities had multiple appointments and were able to ensure that they always had representation available. So I'm concerned, my personal concern as a town representative is if for whatever reason my alternate has to step in for me because I'm unable to attend a meeting, the idea was that alternate would be prepared by having access to the material, attending the meetings. And that also means that the alternates would need to attend whatever attendance policy or would comply with whatever attendance policies all the other members have. So it would seem to me that those alternates would be under the same duties and responsibilities as a primary member. So I just want to us to keep in mind that we're not talking about how to control the alternate, because the rules will control the alternate. So
play that out, Anthony. So attendance policy to what? To the meetings that you can attend, that he can attend, or vice, or when nobody's in the seat? Does it count against you? Or if he shows up, does it not count against you? I mean, it's just kind of
policies. If we adopt this policy, then that means that anyone who is sworn, if we adopt these bylaws, anyone who is sworn has agreed to abide by all of the policies, the governing documents, our policy and procedures, and everything else, which would include an attendance policy. So if there's an attendance policy that says members can't miss but so many meetings, then that would mean that the alternate would be subscribing to that same policy.
But they're not going to come to meetings where you are. So if they have to come to 1 and 2 a year, hey, look,
I can't say that they would not. All I'm saying is that if they agree to subscribe to the rules and regulations that the rest of us subscribe to, then they should be held to those. So we wouldn't have a need to be worrying about how we manage those alternates. The rules would manage them. That was the only point I was making.
I got you. And we're still out there, and then I think I got enough thumbs up to leave it like it is anyway.
Yes. I'm not upset with what it says.
But Ned, one of the things you pointed out that I had not thought about is it's still out there that everybody could do an alternate. So it could be 27. What did you say? It could be a lot of people. So
54 altogether if everybody did it.
yeah, we need to. I am going to take the time to start going around to the different municipalities in March just to kind of say hello. We're going to invite people appointed by them to go too. So it may be, and maybe we go to MTC so I get them all at one time, but it's probably worth a conversation about how that's managed. So all right, we moved on. Adam, we got the thumbs up to lead us the way this is. What else you got?
This is just a conforming change to match the alternate's point. It's just in a separate section about closed session, so we can add it here. Compensation, do you want to do this one now, Mr. Chair, or do you want to?
Sure. So we got a couple folks that said that they didn't want to be compensated, and that's not what this is saying. It's not saying we're going to compensate anybody. It says that we leave the possibility on the table so we don't have to come back and do 21 people later. And it's also saying that if we do, we would go get an independent. And independent in this situation means a citizen committee to actually look at peer cities and other places and make recommendations. I probably got more response from anything we talked about after the meeting on this one. And I encourage some people to speak up because there was some feelings around, again, the equity thing on this one. The single mother that may be appointed that needed to pay for childcare. I'm reminded of being on city council, and one of the reasons why we got compensation is because we wanted to participate with developers and meet with them and have the lunches like everybody else that can afford to do it on their own. But actually not being able to participate because we can't allow people to buy lunch for us or buy coffee for us, and being careful about that. And I won't keep just talking. I'm going to ask for feedback from other people that have feelings about this one strongly in one way or the other. So anybody else? Is that whose hand is that? That is Ned.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Again, I'm going to reference back in the room with the managers as they constructed this. They were clear there would be no compensation. There would be reimbursement. And as the law evolved, we pointed out to the drafters, hey, you've got this provision in here about compensation, but the makers were clear they did not want to have a compensation element. The evening of our last meeting, Larry Shaheen and I were going back and forth, and I said, I thought the county had something in a resolution about this. And he came back to me and he said, the final payback withdrew the compensation reference. So he said, you cannot have compensation. I've not been able to verify that, but it may solve this if indeed the act does not provide for compensation.
So this is Frank. I appreciate that. I thank you, Ned, for that. I haven't gotten it committed to memory yet. I'll read it a few more times. But I think that so where I would fall is absent an express prohibition. I would be more in favor of leaving this decision, leaving future boards the option, should circumstances that we are now unforeseen warrant. That doesn't require us to pay compensation today or tomorrow, but it leaves that situation open. So that would be my view.
Anybody in the room? Any hands in the room?
Anthony, I have one comment on that. And I think it makes sense that those board members who are employed by other units of local government would not want the appearance of them double dipping, getting paid at work and getting paid here as well. Private sector does not have that. And there are numerous other authorities, commissions that are appointed where compensation is paid. And in fact, the North Carolina General Statute accommodates that and stipulates what the provisions are for payment for authority members. I'm concerned that the notion that a private citizen who donates their time to an authority like this being excluded from compensation when it's available to other citizens who serve or are appointed on similar kinds of authorities, commissions, boards, is inconsistent. The statute in section 168-905 is titled Membership Officers Compensation. It doesn't speak to compensation, but it certainly recognizes compensation. So I would support the notion that there should be an option for the body to, at whatever point, decide how and if compensation is available and to whom it would be available.
Riverman.
It denotes everything that Mr. Lindsay said, but I also wanted to add, that's why it's important that we finalize the code of ethics, because I think that we can refer this specific sections of the bylaws to the code of ethics.
Well, again, this is read so that a citizen committee would have to make a recommendation. So, I mean, there's a lot of room, including saying that you don't have to take the money and you can donate it. I mean, there's a lot of ways to deal with this. This is all about not tying hands now. I haven't heard from, and I'm not asking you to do it, but I want to make sure before we do a thumbs up. Matt, Christy, Justin, and whoever else is in the room. Anybody else got anything before we do a thumbs up or down?
I support Frank's comment on this in the sense that, we don't want to, you're not binding us to saying, hey, everyone on this board currently is going to all of a sudden want compensation, but it also doesn't, preclude us for any future board in the future for something that is unseen or undiscussed right now. So this is, I like the clause that's written, and I share Frank's sentiment toward it.
And Clayton, Sealy, Mecklenburg County, I support everything Mr. Lindsay had to say. I think it would be a mistake for us not to mention this in there for anyone looking at our bylaws in the future, deciding whether or not they want to be part of this authority. I think it's important to be part of our.
All right, so let's do thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm a thumb for. Let's do our thumbs up first, or however we do it. Tell me in the room, how many people yes, how many no's before we do on the line?
3 trustees in the room are thumbs up.
Okay, and then online? Thank you, Ned Curran. Hey, the other thing I'll say
did you get mine?
I got everybody. It was unanimous.
Okay,
I don't
great.
see any down.
Okay, unanimous.
Yeah. Hey, what I will say is this: that was a strong conversation. So I am asking us as a committee, if you see a friend, talk to a friend. Let's not turn this into, I don't know, the tone of this one was interesting to me, and I want to make sure we don't go through that again. So, I mean, let's be strong when we go in the room. Let's stay with it. Let's see what we can get with it. And whose hand is that up? Is that you, Matt?
Yeah, it was just, I'm generally okay with hearing. I get the points on both sides of the argument. My concern, and this is more for an attorney, is, is any conflict with, state statutes or interpretation thereof, and those have already come up. And I don't know if it would be worth, I don't want to torture the language, but saying, subject to some sort of confirmation, because I get where T. Anthony's coming from, where the word compensation is in the PAVE Act, but otherwise doesn't really confer the abilities. So anyway, if I've got a lasting concern, I'll vote for the language as drafted, but it would just be that, I want to make sure that we don't get sideways with actual state law.
I think what Frank was saying, and Frank, I'm gonna do what you say. I'm gonna say what I think I heard Frank say. If it's silent on it, then it's silent on it. I don't want to make it confirm. I'd like to not say we got to go back to the General Assembly to do it. And that's what it kind of sounds like what you just said, Matt. Am I wrong?
I see that potential, but yeah, I know that would be impossible.
I don't think you're right. Into bylaws, we need to go get permission to do something.
Yeah, look, if
So,
implied works over, express approval and, people more knowledgeable than me, on this call are comfortable with that, then I'm good.
okay. All right.
Well,
What you got next, Adam?
If there is a concern about this, and I don't want to spend too long on it, we could say may receive other rehabilitation permitted by law. And that would cover any checking on the statute, and then if there's this committee that they would consult with council, it wouldn't involve going back to the General Assembly. It would just make clear that compensation would be permitted.
The whole body of bylaws is under that though. So do
That's
we need
true.
to call it out under one point?
It
All
doesn't,
of
I don't think it needs to be expressly in there, but if it's to address concerns.
I am trying to move us forward, and I got thumbs up from everybody. So let's keep going. What else we got?
All right, keep going. Next up. This is a very minor comment.
Sorry, just wanted to enlarge it.
Public comments. This is just consistent with board rules, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's a very minor comment. The language, the reference to discussion there was intended to capture the chair's ability to change some of the rules with respect to public comment. If there's a bunch of people who have signed up, reducing the time for each speaker, things like that. It wasn't intended to override those rules. So that's all this is clarifying.
It was a good catch by whoever said that. I don't think anybody has concerns on this one, right? So let's keep going.
Small change here in 402, just specifying that in an election we'll use roll call balloting.
Yeah, I don't know if I care about that one. Anybody have any concerns with that? That's the election of officers, making people do it in front of everybody. Got it. What else you got? Who is that?
This is Anthony over here. I just have a question on this one here because gave an example of majority, and then I need clarification on how we define majority. Is it a plurality or is the simple majority? How are we defining that? If you have 3 candidates and there are 21 people in the room and no one gets 11 votes, then who's the elected party? Is it
I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm ready to.
Majority of votes cast, or is it a majority in the same sense that everything else is the majority, which means we've already defined that a majority of the body is 14. So we just need to be clear about what we mean by majority vote on this election, even though it's balloting, and I like clarification on ballot.
It would be more than half of the votes cast is what it would be.
Maybe more than half. That's
The majority.
With that, I'm with Anthony. I'm with Anthony on this one. If we say that everything takes 14 votes, I mean, we said that last meeting and we all agreed to it. I mean, I thought
Right,
that
so I
meant
guess,
on every action that we did.
Right.
Yeah,
So
but can I just jump? The challenge with this one is in that last discussion we were talking about what I'm gonna call a bifurcated question. There's just yes or no, up or down. Here what you pose now is a proposition with more than 2 choices.
Yes, sir.
And
That's
so
right.
that I'm just saying as I sit here, so that's why I see that. I mean, we can really delve down into it, but I think that's the because one of the things I'm listening for as we do this, it's important to really understand it. But these things have to allow us to do business too. So we don't want to have to stop and have a big conversation each time. So anyway, I understand the change there.
You make a good point, Frank. Let me think that through. 3 people go up. You should narrow it down to the top 2. In a situation where you have a 3-way tie, what you do in any other situation is you do it again to see if you can get to 2. And if not, then you wind up kicking it to the next meeting. I mean, that's just the way that works, because eventually you need to get it to 2 so somebody can get a majority.
Yep.
So, in Anthony, in that situation, I'm pretty sure Robert says that the top two move forward.
Mr. Chair, Roberts would say that you would vote again.
You would keep voting until you got there.
Correct. No one is compelled to withdraw.
Oh, no, I'm just saying, but if it was a three-way tie, yes, but you would hope the wisdom in the room, one person would move so you can narrow it down to two. I mean, often that's what happens is people say, I'm gonna stay with you on the first ballot, but I'm gonna change on the second and third ballot. So I think the real answer to that question is right the way that it is. We would just keep voting until we got there. All right? Everybody okay with this roll call?
Yep.
All right. What else you got, Adam?
I think everybody's, that's how it's gonna work.
If you don't get it though, Anthony, you just stop.
This is Brother Matt David.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think that I think we're making too many assumptions. That things are going to work a certain way, and I've seen quite often it does not work the way that we assume it would work. I think it's more important for us to have a link in the bylaws that specifies, as attorney said, more than half or 14 or more. Because that is very specific and there's no ambiguity.
But I think I'm saying,
The first person who reads this, okay, a simple majority would be 14.
Right. I think the substantive question here is it a majority? I mean, I think we're on the same page that majority is more than half, but more than half of what? Right. And I think the question is it a majority of the votes cast or a majority of the voting members? Right.
In my mind, it's the majority of the voting members, right? But that doesn't mean we're all 27 in the room at the time.
Right. So it sounds like there may be disagreement on that, or if it's.
That's why
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm gonna help us. I'm gonna help us move on this one if you don't mind, everybody. What we said in the meeting is that we wanted a minimum of 14 votes on every vote we do. So that's actually decided already, whether it's on this or not. In the situation that Anthony proposed where 3 people voted, what I'm saying is that we would keep voting. If it's a 3-way tie, then it's not a vote. Then we would go back, give people a chance to make speeches again, and see if we can get that to budge. If for some reason we do it 2 or 3 times and we don't get it down to 2, so we can get 14 on somebody, then we just don't do it. It gets deferred to the next meeting.
I agree with that.
I do too. I do too. Yeah.
But that's just the way it would work anyway. That's why I'm saying we don't need to really say anything else. It would just keep going until you got it down to 2 people, so one of them would get 14 or not.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I would suggest, and I think clarifying language that is more consistent with section 2.07. 2.07, which is the manner of acting provision, we say the affirmative vote of a majority of all board members or such different amount as otherwise required hereby shall be necessary for any action taken by the authority. And I think what would address the uncertainty here about the number of folks required to elect a board officer would be to use that same phrase, a majority of all board members, right? By a vote of a majority of all board members, as opposed to saying majority vote. Would that clarify it?
I think it's clarified already, to be honest with you, but I'm gonna leave that to them. I mean, because we've already, what I don't want to do is redo the whole 14 thing. We talked about that at length, and we all said it should be 14. All right, Christy, and
yeah, I don't want to slow us down, but just help me in real life visualize how this will happen. If you're voting for board officers and you kick it to the next meeting, we need to be careful about when that vote takes place because you could end up with no officers.
I think in theory, what you would probably do is if it's really that contentious, the current people would probably continue until you don't. I mean, that's kind of the way it
What
works.
about board members who have terms ending? So I'm just thinking about it in real life, and I mean we just started talking about this. I can't play out how that really works
I,
without some kind of flaw.
I think at some point we have to step back, and I agree with everybody's scenario planning here, but if this board is this dysfunctional, we're going to have the people who are the appointing bodies stepping in and making changes. I think to get through this, if we had to say, to address Christie's concern, until another person is appointed, the existing officer's term continues, just to solve for that. But otherwise, I think we've just got to assume that this body is reasonably functional, and if not, other factors are going to address it.
Yeah. And I understand those assumptions, and so thank you for that, Ned. But I do think we need to have language to care for what could happen, even though we don't want it to happen.
I'm gonna ask my Roberts rules folk in the room. Does Roberts kind of say that? And if we're referring to Roberts where we don't have specific language, would Roberts not carry us through some of that?
I think the bylaws do say that. The bylaws, the end of 4.02 says each board officer shall hold office until his or her successor shall be duly elected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there's an inability to elect somebody, the officers do continue.
There you go. That's correct.
And I think that takes care of the term running out too, Christy. You stay until the new body appoints somebody new.
All right.
But to the attorneys, do you add language there, say pursuant to section blah 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 blah, just so it doesn't get lost?
The language that Ken just read from is at the bottom of this section.
Oh, it's in this section.
It's the last sentence of this section.
So it's there already, Christy, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
All right, next issue, Adam, James.
These are very minor corrections, just that the vice chair and secretary and then the other board officers, they're not assigning duties, they are delegating duties. It's a technical. I don't think anybody would have an issue with this.
Yeah, you don't want to assign these three people anything. You ask them very nicely. So.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in 4.05, and that's in section
B.
Or B, C, and E. Right, we're gonna come back to these.
Was this something that you guys caught, or did it come from a member?
That came from Mr. Lindsay.
Mr. Lindsay, you want to talk about any of this, or we all good? Because I don't know if we're good with it.
Yeah,
Mr. Lindsay, this was the response to your comments about what can the chair assign?
yeah, that was the main question. Was we didn't make any sort of clarification around which duties, what was the scope of duties that could be assigned by the chair or vice chair, or for that matter, anybody else. And the question was, was there some place where we prescribed the ability of the officers to assign duties to some that exceeded their authority? And that was the question, whether or not there were some prescribed set of duties that could be either delegated or assigned, or could they only delegate those authorities which they had, which they possess? And I'm assuming that's the assumption, that they could only delegate the authorities that they had.
That's the word choice there for delegation.
I'm sorry. I was just saying, that's an interesting question. I'm not sitting as a lawyer, but I'm just sitting here thinking, I don't know that I don't know how you would delegate more authority than you already had.
Right, yeah, that's why we use the word as the principle.
Yeah,
Okay.
theoretically assigned could be misinterpreted.
I'm comfortable with that.
Very good.
Yeah. All right, great.
I think they say the same thing. That's why I'm okay with it. So.
All right, roll on.
Yeah, what else you got?
So clarifying change, well, not clarifying change. In 4.05, the earlier draft of the bylaws had provided that the treasurer has to provide a performance bond, essentially asserting and establishing that the treasurer would serve as the finance officer. The revision here is to give the board the ability to designate a different individual as the finance officer. As you guys all know, with the interlocal agreement arrangement, the city is the contracting party, so that there is not a finance officer yet. There's not a need for one. But eventually there will be staff for the authority, and a member of the staff could be designated as a finance officer. So that's really all the change is intended to address.
Right. And it's required at statute there to have the finance officer under state law. And this just gives the board the ability to say that we think it makes sense to have the chief financial officer be the finance officer.
That's the.
Ned, do you disagree with that in any way?
No, I'm fine with it. My feelings are hurt, but I can live with it.
I figured they would be. Yeah, that's an easy one, y'all. So unless somebody has anything, we'll keep going. Anything on that? All right. What else you got?
So in section 6.01A, so this relates back to that language, Ms. Reverend Mack, that you referenced in duties. The draft of the bylaws provides that there is one at-large member of the executive committee, and that at-large member is appointed by the chair. There were comments and discussion about the size of the executive committee, whether there should be one or more at-large members, and who has the appointment authority for them, be it the chair or the full board, and if they needed any other criteria to serve as an at-large member.
And this is one of those changes that is a policy question. The board, just to clarify this, is to respect about current executive committee, because there are freestanding committees, but treasurer is the chair of the finance committee.
This is to get to 7. 4 officers, 2 committees. You need 7, so you don't have 6. That's all that this is trying to solve for.
Suspending the executive committee. So that was my comment on that section. And my goal, this is Anthony, I'm sorry. My goal was to expand the executive committee from 7 to 9. So you can still have your 2 additional committee members whoever they are, serving, but you would have 3 other elected at-large committee members from the body. And the body would elect those 3 at-large members. And I went further to suggest that those 3 at-large members be designated, one from the county, one from the city, and one from the towns, so that there's the assurance of having the diversity of representation on the executive committee.
So I hear all that is being said there. My well, in my experience, the executive committee is designed to be small enough to be nimble and to act outside the meeting of the full board. You're almost back to double digits here with, or actually, I guess, about with that one. I'm concerned that the size of that puts you in a it really thwarts what you're trying to do. The executive committee, in my mind, is still beholden to the board in full. So, whatever action it takes is reviewable, either practically or actually by the full board there. So I would urge that a focus on a smaller number would be better.
Yeah, and Ned, I see you. I want to just chime in on Frank real quick. 9 to me is a third of the board, if I'm doing the math right. Almost a third. So I mean, that's huge. That's too much power for an executive committee to me. It just is 5 is too small, 9 is too big, 7 feels like the right number. So that's where that was coming from. Ned? You're on mute, Ned, if you're talking.
Yeah, thank you. T. Anthony, I had the exact same sentiment when I first read the bylaws. But I am totally where Frank and David are. The whole point of the executive committee is to be nimble. And if we expand it too much. And I'm joking when I say I'll take personal offense that you didn't say we also should include the gubernatorial appointment, the Senate appointment, and the House appointment. So I think we have to count on the chair, and we've added that provision. The chair and council would be thoughtful about making sure there's representation both in the officers group and in the executive committee and the committee chair appointments, to have the constituencies, the appointing bodies reasonably represented across those boards so that we get there. So I in the end came back to I like the existing language, but I recognize your sentiment.
And actually, this is one of those times when I probably should not talk a lot, so I won't do a lot on this, because I do want y'all to know that I'm thinking about future, not just now. I mean, the scenario we have right now is that me, Frank, and Christy are all city appointees. I mean, what happens in the future if we start designating stuff for different bodies and say the towns all get the officers? Should they still get a position? Should the county still get one? To Ned's point, what about the mayor, about the governor? What about, I mean, this is one of those times when if you don't like what the chair does, and it includes me, vote me out next time. I mean, that's why I think if you start prescribing too much, you don't get what you need when you need it. I mean, if we're starting to talk about regionalism, should it look different? If we're starting to talk about different things, should it look different? Another thing I'll put on the table, and I didn't share this at the meeting, is that we also are going to have an appointment to the COG, an appointment to the MPO. They've already asked me to start attending meetings. And just so you guys know, I said no because it's still an MTC seat, but I did ask the former mayor of Mint Hill, Brad Simmons, to start, as a guest to attend the MPO meetings, with the thought that if we ever get there, he would be the person that I would ask to do that because he just came off of it. So there's a lot to consider when we do these, as opposed to just kind of grabbing at, well, give us a seat now. I mean, Anthony, even deciding between the northern towns and the southern towns. I mean, I think there's so many things to play on this one that we should leave as much flexibility for this to play out. So anybody else? And then I think Anthony actually proposed two different things that we should give him some feedback on. So anything else on this in general before we kind of make a decision?
This is Ken, and I agree with those comments. Also point out that the bylaw permit board to establish additional standing committees. So executive committee gets bigger every time where it does that. Ready large.
Nope, it does.
Officers. And appoint additional officers as well.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Reverend Man, enough to the point I could make that the board already has the ability to expand the executive committee based on the language we have already.
And I don't want to scare us, but if we start expanding regionally and we don't know what that would look like, but I would suspect if I was Iredell County, I'm going to want to see it on the board. I mean, it's going to kind of grow naturally if we get regional anyway. And Ned, I don't know if you guys thought about that when you were doing this, but I mean, that's 6 counties around us.
We absolutely did. And we said that when the first county comes in, the board size will be decreased. That we had to get to 27 to get through the initial setup of this authority, but that at some point you try to get it to a more manageable number.
So that's Cabarrus, Iredell, going around the horn. I mean, it could just, depending on who's going to bring money to the table, it could start looking like the Senate sometime soon. So let's just be careful about doing it now.
Mr. Chair, this is Reverend Maddox, but I think that we need to at some point revisit the fact that we do have all city appointees on the executive committee at this time, and it could be very well a situation where we have all towns on the executive committee, and that may become problematic if people don't feel like there's some level of inclusion. So we need to try to think about what language we could implement to ensure that it is more inclusive.
Well, again, Red Mac, I think I'm saying that given what's going on at the time, who knows? Maybe that's what we need, and that's why the body Because remember, the body votes on the officers. Nobody's
I
making
know, we didn't
anybody
think
do.
about it. We didn't think about it. We didn't
I
think,
got
let's
you.
be honest, never thought about it. Now we're discussing it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So the first thing is, Anthony, your first thing was 9 members or not. You've heard our arguments. You got anything to say before we do thumbs up or down on 9 or 7?
Yeah, my only reservation about this is these are both arbitrary numbers. 9 is arbitrary, 7. The reality is that the board members should be electing the leadership. And I respect the comments that everybody's made about the use of an executive committee, how you would apply it. And that is the reason for ensuring that currently that there is broader representation on the executive committee. We can entrust the executive committee with more authority, which is the other point that I made in here, is the entrusting the executive committee with more authority, which distributes authority across a larger group rather than simply 4 officers, or in some cases, just the chair. And I personally am in favor of having a more distributed authority on the body that clearly represents all of the entire body. And if the body were to elect those additional executive committee members, it would be a representation of the body's decision, as opposed to relying on the altruism of whomever the chair is to make their choices. The only other point I would make about committees, standing committees, in my mind, the presumption was that standing committee chairs would bear some technical kind of expertise that qualified them more for the role of the chair of a particular committee, as opposed to simply serving in the executive capacity. So the goal would be to have committee chairs have some level of expertise that qualified them to be a committee chair versus they were just being appointed as committee chair so they could serve on the executive committee. So those were my thoughts.
I'd
move the question.
I'm gonna respond to one thing on city council, county commission. I mean, the mayor makes that decision, and again, I mean, I think you have a say so in who you pick as chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer, and you should question them before you vote for them. So let's say, because we actually dealt with 2 or 3 things with this one conversation, Adam, if I'm not mistaken. So I mean, right now, 7 members, 4 officers. Right now, in the bylaws, as they're written, there are 3 committees. The treasurer is automatically the chair of the finance and audit committee. There'd be 2 other committees, one around operations, one around planning, and then an at-large member to just round out the 7, so it's not 6. With appointments by the chair in consultation with the officers this first time, the executive committee going forward. The alternate is Anthony saying 9. All of them, every executive committee officer would be elected by the full body. So we go through another election as soon as we do these bylaws. And I think, Anthony, you're still leaving it to the chair to decide out of those 9, I guess, other 4 or 5, other 5 people, they would decide who would be chair of those other 2 committees.
My proposal was that the executive committees not have to be made up of committee chairs. If the body chose to include the committee chairs as executive committee members, then you would act accordingly. But the executive committee would be, in fact, an executive committee that were all elected by the body. That was my proposal. So,
But the committee, I'm sorry, But the committee
No,
chairs are the most informed. I mean, I mean, at some point, there are lots of very significant decisions that have to be made, and several of them this year, and we'll get
it's
bogged
crazy how
down
many
trying to
decisions.
delegate to the executive committee, delegate to a committee where the committee chair is not involved. I mean, we need some degree of speed of execution in order to get done what we need to get done, not just this year, but throughout time. There's a real efficiency associated with having the committee chairs represented on the executive committee. In fact, Frank, I don't know the attorneys from Robbins and Bradshaw. I don't know that I've ever seen an executive committee that didn't have the committee chairs presiding.
I'm sorry. I confused the issue, Ed. I wasn't suggesting that the committee chairs should not be on the executive committee.
Yeah.
My point was to the committee members, the 7 committee members were all elected. That's how you get to 9.
Yeah.
So we have 2 additional you have 2 additional members who are committee chairs, but the 7 would be the ones that are the elected ones. So I apologize if I confused.
No, I get the distinction.
So you would wind up having 2, 3 at-large members is what you're talking about. Okay.
Exactly. 4 officers, 3 at-large members. You add the 2 committee chairs, and now you got 9. That's exactly right.
And me and you, we've had this conversation. I think it's too big. I think it is so far out of the way that other bodies operate that, I mean, we could get into territory that's not been done before. But Anthony knows where I am. The point here, and please be patient with us, is to get through some of these things. So we shouldn't do this in the board meeting. I mean, I want us to have a full recommendation, a clear recommendation from this body when we go back. That's why I want us to be patient if that's okay. So, I
agree with that, David. And Anthony, I agree with, I totally understand where you're coming from. As I said at the beginning, my first read, I was kind of where you were. But as I've thought through boards that I've served on and the roles that executive committees play, it would just get large, unwieldy, difficult to call in urgent situations. We'd get into majority votes. And I think life's a series of alternatives. And in this case, the construct that the chair has proposed probably makes the most sense. It's something I can support.
I mean, think about it. You only need 5 more votes to do anything outside the executive committee. That's a lot of power. All right. So the way we did everything else was, and we're talking about not what's on the screen, but the way that I just described the bylaws is the way it lays it out right now. Thumbs up, leave it, or if you think there's anything we should talk about, maybe we kick that to another meeting so we can finish talking it through. In the room. So Reverend Mack and Ken and Clayton.
So you just made a statement that may be troubling to me, or may not. I may have misconstrued.
Yes, ma'am.
Talk about the executive committee. You said that's a lot of power. Well, it's a lot of power now with the 5 of you or the 4 of you. I'm trying to understand, how do we make a determination as to who the executive committee will be, whether it's 7 or 9? And I heard all the arguments, and, it's too big and all those other things I heard. But we're talking about creating something very new in Mecklenburg, and that is a mass public transit authority. This is not the city. This is not Mecklenburg County. This is a transit authority. And based on the transit authority that I know about, the city transit authority, 9 is not a large number. 9 may be a large number for Mecklenburg. I'll concede if that's the case. But I don't want us to get into these discussions or these statements that something is too powerful, because if you think about it, those of you who are in the executive committee right now are making decisions and recommendation to us. And I don't see it as too powerful. I think it's necessary, right? It may be necessary for us to really begin to look at ensuring that the county has a representation and that, the state has representation. I'm not sure. I'm in the middle right now.
So Reverend Mac, let me clarify something about the philosophy of this whole thing is for me anyway, and I think it's what Ned and Frank are saying. I am all about the body speaking together. I don't want a large group of people to get together more often than the board making decisions for us all. We should make recommendations. And the officers right now are just trying to move things. Trust me, we want an executive committee. We very much want to spread this out. So I mean, this is not about power. What I'm saying is that if you have 9 members, in order to get something passed, you only need to get turns 5 more people if 9 people already agree. That's what I'm saying is too much power for 9 people to make decisions because it starts to you start to disengage people if they say, well, they don't need us because they can do everything they want. They got 9 already votes when they show up. This is me making sure that the body always has the final say and the most say on anything. So I'm saying keep the executive committee small so that the power is always with the majority of the body, not just finding 5 more people.
I get you.
I want it to be the body speaking as one. That is my goal, 100%. So, all right. So, with that said, Reverend Mack and Ken and Clayton, where are you guys? Because I got thumbs up from on the screen already.
Thumbs up for me. This is Clayton for River County.
Ken?
I agree with the language.
And Reverend Mack?
I'm going to give a thumbs up because I can't abstain.
And it is noted, Anthony, and I'm sure you would tell us at the meeting, but I wanted you to make sure we heard you out because I thought you were concerned that we didn't get to hear it the first time through. So, no problem. Next up.
This is just the related discussion we were in, so we can skip over that.
No, keep going. Yep. We just said to leave the selection and hiring. What was that?
And so this comes out of a comment from Lindsay questioning we're looking for clarity on the references here to selection and hiring and putting forth a proposal for a search committee. The exec for the CEO in particular.
As long as it's clear that all of these would be recommendations to the full body. And I think it'll be up to the full body when we take this up to decide the path. It may be we don't want to do one because we know who we want, and it may be search committee is what we want. But this is a recommendation to the body on how to proceed, Anthony. I don't want to tie the body's hands and say you have to do a search.
May I ask a question?
Yes, please.
To colleagues at Robinson. If you added, since it's executive committee shall, if you add a parenthetical that says subject to the final approval of the full board, and then the rest of that, would that help where we are, or is that muddying the waters?
Well, I think it's Anthony. Anthony, this was yours.
Well, no, I was actually asking the lawyers first.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Say again?
Frank, this is James. My concern with that would be that essentially you'd be saying that the executive committee really can't do anything. It gets a little bit.
That's fair. That's fair.
Circular.
No, you're right. You're right. Okay, thank you. I thought I had a solution, but no, I don't. Thank you. All right.
So a couple of proposals that might work for a solution would be we could remove the word selection and hiring, and it just says lead the performance management processes of the CEO, and we leave selection and hiring just silent, and the board can follow its procedures for standing up an ad hoc committee that can serve as a standing committee if they want to do that. Otherwise, it would just be a board vote to hire whoever they want if the board decides that they don't need a search committee. So it's one potential solution for clarity.
I like
that solution.
What did you say?
I said if you were asking me, I prefer that solution.
Oh, the select and hire. I'm good with that. So we would leave performance management process. but take the selection out, and that could just be an ad hoc committee when that time comes. Works for me.
Well, sorry, lead the,
Sure, Ned.
we're talking about taking away the lead the selection, hiring, or is it lead the selection and performance management processes, but hiring would be for the board? Where I'm going with this is, go ahead, T. Anthony, let me clarify for me.
So sorry, this is James. I just wanted to clarify. Yeah, I think the discussion is to delete the words selection, hiring, and, so that the remaining clause would be lead the performance management processes of the CEO.
So if we were in the process of trying to hire a CEO, usually that requires discretion. I guess the chair would either select an ad hoc committee for that purpose or use the executive committee. But generally, that is not something that would be best practice to have the entire board involved in.
Yeah.
In the process of people are not going to want to out themselves in looking for a position to that many people. So
yeah. I think what I heard.
Caution. I do think the board obviously needs to be the final approver of a recommendation from whatever committee for a candidate or candidates.
Yeah.
In my experience,
what I heard. I'm sorry, Frank. No, go on, Frank, please.
I was going to say, in my experience, yeah, Ned, I think I support what you say. I mean, there's some group like the executive committee that would work with the outside consultant, whatever, and come up with some candidates that would then be vetted. But then there would be an opportunity for the board to meet the finalists, for example, and be kept apprised going forward. But I just want to underscore what Ned has said. You're not going to get top candidates who want to go in and have their name in the paper that they're looking for this job while they have a job somewhere else. That's just the folks that just aren't going to do it.
And the same thing's true typically of the performance review of the CEO, that it's done by a small group and then brought forth to the full board in executive session to share their results.
Yeah.
And I think this is Clayton Sealy, Mecklenburg County. I think we are in agreement here in this room. We're talking about an ad hoc committee being established to lead these efforts, not it being to the discretion of the entire board.
Yeah, the way the bylaws are written now, you all, is that we all have to kind of agree on the ad hoc committee and the charge anyway. So I don't think that comes away from the executive committee or whoever to put it together. However we do an ad hoc committee, it's just saying we would do it through an ad hoc, Ned and Frank, and not, it wouldn't always start with us. It could start with 9 people, 14 people on the board saying we should start one to do this. And if you have, if the CEO has 14 people that want to do a process, they got a problem anyway.
I would say though that if at this point we have reservations that we wouldn't entrust our executive committee to do that, I normally I would be all for the ad hoc, but I don't know why we're saying it could only be an ad hoc and not the executive committee. If we can't trust the executive committee to do this, we have a problem.
Yeah, you got the wrong executive committee.
The body could say the executive committee is the committee. I mean, you know, the way it's set up right now is that if the body said we should do a search, then it's leaving it up to me as chair or future chairs to recommend a group forward in consultation or however we put it. So, I mean, you know, it's going to be kind of a team effort anyway. I think I just don't want to get hung up on selection and hire. I don't think the body's going to have a problem with leaving it in there, but, you know.
Mr. Chair, this is Reverend Matt. I do not agree that it should be the executive committee who does the hiring performance management. I think there should be an ad hoc committee separate from the executive committee. Some of the executive committee members could be a part of that ad hoc committee, but it should not be the executive committee. And the ad hoc committee did make recommendations on board. Let's say there's 20 people who got the ad hoc committee would then do their research and interviews and come back to a recommendation of possibly 2 or 3. And the decision would be made.
I think this wording, y'all, because Elizabeth and I kind of worked on some of this, is that when it says lead selection, hiring, and performance, it's talking about recommending a process to the body. It's not saying take it away from the body. Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong. This was never intended to say the executive committee would do all of this. It was really to recommend a process for doing this stuff.
define a process that would be brought back to the board for consideration. It was just that they would take ownership of figuring out how to move forward.
That's
Yeah,
all.
Mr. Chair, we could revise the clause then to bring processes to the front of the clause, right? To say exactly like you said, Elizabeth, define the processes to recommend to the board for the selection, hiring, and performance management of CEO, something to that effect.
Or you could just say lead the process for selection, hiring, and performance management, just to put a process at the front, so it's clear that.
Yeah.
It's not that the executive committee is hiring, it's just their leading the process.
Yeah, let's leave it at that. For Ned, that's kind of what you've been saying. It was never intended for us to do it. It's to say we recommend a process.
Yeah.
Somebody has to give a price. Somebody has to talk about it and recommend something. Somebody has to.
And yes, and say it now and put the flag in the ground. And that process has got to be very regularized and very confidential with respect to the interests of both the candidates on that end, and then and also with respect to the evaluation of the CEO. So I just want to make sure all hearts and minds are clear, or at least if we're not, we ought to come to some resolution on that, because I think we're going to face that sooner rather than later.
Adam and James, give me what you want to say on that so we can move on. Process.
So,
how did you reword it?
Right. So yeah, the proposal would be to revise the clause to say lead the processes for selection, hiring, and performance management of the CEO.
All right.
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Mr. Chair, just one last comment on that section. I raised this question. I'm concerned that when the idea of distributing authority is couched as distrust for the leadership that is countervening to us collaborating. It has nothing to do with trust. It has to do with what I believe is appropriate distribution of authority. That's just me personally. The notion that it is predetermined how the process will unfold is what this paragraph or this sub-bullet suggests to me, is that the executive committee controls how that happens. The idea that the body makes the choice seemed to be absent from this one particular item. And that was the concern that I had. I think in principle, we agree the body should be the final determinant decision maker. There needs to be some smaller group that goes through the process. I believe that the body should also make that decision. I could live with the idea that the executive committee brings a proposal to the full body about how that process unfolds, but it still needs to be the full body's decision, in my opinion, as to how we go about making the decision for hiring and whether or not it is the CEO or any other director. So I'm concerned that we get away from the notion that a suggestion that we distribute authority is a indictment of distrust against the leadership. That is not, in my mind, that's not a collaborative approach for us to take. So I personally don't have any distrust, and I'm not really worried about what the executive not do, but I want to ensure that the body is the decision-making authority for the authority.
I think all that would take to do that is say on that one and recommend to the board. I don't think anybody on this call is trying to say that 7 people are going to select and hire anybody without coming to the body. Nobody's going to finish a performance management review and not bring it to the body. Yeah. So I mean, that's not it. So if that's what this is saying, I don't think anybody, and somebody speak up. We're not asking the lawyers not to convey that in this sentence. We just don't want a paragraph. So, I mean, I think we all agree. Somebody has to talk about it. Somebody has to make a recommendation. We're saying it should be the executive committee, but it's going to always be a final vote of the board. If that's not clear, then Adam and James, please help us make it clear.
Back to Frank's earlier comment with respect to the section, we could, for this one specifically, for E, lead with something along the lines of subject to the approval of the board, just to make that very clear.
And I am going to push us maybe a few more minutes, and then I think we just need to schedule another meeting because we didn't even get to indemnification, and I don't want to rush that through in the last few minutes.
I'm fine with that modification, Mr. Chair.
All right. So, I mean, so in the next meeting, because we'll schedule another meeting, just make that clear. I'm like Frank at the last meeting. I don't want to rush you on that. So just get that one line clear that none of us intend to take anything from the body, ever, never, especially on hiring.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you're going to take a vote, but I'm voting no because my suggestion is that it is at our committee, not that the executive committee makes that decision in terms of finding the CEO.
Okay.
Or recommending the CEO.
But we're not saying that. All we're saying on this one now, again, is that we're making a recommendation to the body on how to proceed. If we came back and said it should be an executive committee, then you can vote it down. But I doubt that's what we're saying, especially after this conversation. So, I mean,
Even like just to clarify, proceed is like the process, not the actual recommendation.
But I think that
hiring.
They're saying that in this room, but on paper, we are not clarifying those items, and that's what's troubling for me. I get what the concept is, but if it's not in writing, you have 25 people who are now going to read it and have a whole different perspective of what it means.
And I'm not asking for a thumbs up or down on this one. That's why I'm asking the lawyers to come back on this one. We got to schedule another meeting anyway.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, let's keep going. Do you have any simple ones, Adam, left? We're doing 2 or 3 minutes.
David, one other thought that a lot of other authorities do is that they have a policy around the hiring of the CEO and performance management. So to keep the simplicity and flexibility of the bylaws, that you then have a supplemental policy to support that, and that might be a way also to move forward.
And I'm suggesting you're more than welcome to work with Adam and James to bring us back something. So we're not going to do thumbs up or down on this one at all. So you got anything else, Adam and James, that we can get through?
We'll propose some language here. I actually think that we may be able to finish pretty quickly unless we have in-depth conversations about indemnification, because I actually think that that's pretty straightforward, subject to some explanation at the workshop. Emily, can you just skip ahead? I think the next two are just, so I think the question here that folks weren't clear about was that reasonable expenses and reasonable payments gave the board the opportunity to just deny indemnification outright. That's not what was intended, but we've clarified that to just make clear that the expenses need to be not excessive, not unreasonable, and then that follows the same process that we already have in the second section.
So let me share some with the group before we do this. You guys haven't seen the agenda yet for the retreat, and I'm sorry. Elizabeth and I are trying to get it to you today. But part of that is right before lunch, we've asked the lawyers to do something we're calling indemnification 101. So we can actually better understand, maybe through some graphics and other things, what is contemplated through indemnification and what's contemplated on the insurance thing that Lucia asked about. So we have an hour set aside right before lunch just to do indemnification 101. As a matter of fact, I will tell you, and officers, I hadn't had a chance to talk to you about this yet, but we kind of talked about education sessions going forward. One of the things we did at the planning commission is we made our dinners education sessions when I was there as chair. And we're talking about, when we run into these things where we need people, we have people that have questions about things, we start to use dinner as a time for education stuff. So in this situation, we're going to start with indemnification. So one of the reasons why, Adam, I don't want to rush through this is I'd rather take this up in a bylaws meeting after this first retreat, so that people can get comfortable with what indemnification and this insurance thing is. Does anybody disagree with that approach? So yeah, let's not even try this one. You can sit it out so we can read it, but let's take this up at the retreat when I don't want anybody else to say they felt rushed through indemnification. Not one. So let's not even try that one if everybody's okay with that. Anything else?
This is the same piece as indemnification.
Oh, leave that for the conversation, please.
Right, and just to put everyone's mind at ease, I'm not going to subject you to an hour of indemnification. I asked one of our law partners, Rob Harrington, to also talk about serving on boards. He's been on every board that I've been on in our community, and so he's just going to talk with us as well about sort of the duties of board members, right? Which is really the flip side of indemnification: is what does the board owe you, and then what do you owe them? So that's what that.
So coordinate that.
A chance to catch up with you on that, but that was our proposed plan, was to cover indemnification and insurance, but also talk about some sort of director best practice.
So coordinate with Elizabeth, because I know that her and D'Alba are already talking about having the School of Government come do some of that in our second meeting. So Elizabeth, if you will work with them to make sure that we're not repeating stuff, so we use our time wisely, I would appreciate it.
Yep, we talked about that. I just haven't had a chance to catch up with you.
You got it. All right, everybody. I'm not trying to rush us, but we are already a half an hour over, and we could keep going and going and going. So Anthony, anything that you have still left, you are welcome to join us at the next meeting. I think I've learned by now that if I can get you comfortable, then maybe I'm gonna be okay. So call me offline, call me tomorrow night, call me whenever, so we can move this stuff forward, please. All right.
Appreciate everybody's thoughtfulness.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Bye. Thank you. Have a safe night, everyone.
All right. Bye bye.
We need to get a store.